Hey all, welcome back to my channel. Today is one of my absolute favorite videos to film and make. It is my fall bake with me. I am so excited for these recipes to show you guys. They were so tasty and delicious, and I was feeling a little, I wouldn't say bummed out, but like I don't know how I'm gonna meet the fall tasty treats video that I did last year because everything that I made was so good. But I have to say, I found some new recipes that are definitely going to be some that I continue to make, and I put in some pretty easy recipes in here for those of you who are like, I want to make something that's festive and fun, but I don't really want to work hard. And trust me, I've been the same way, but I've recently started to bake more and get more adventurous with what I'm doing. So what I'm making first is a caramel apple sheet cake, and I've never actually made a sheet cake before this. I had to go out and buy a new pan, but this turned out surprisingly well. I will say that my glaze was kind of clumpy, and I'm not really sure why. I probably could have used something different to mix it up, but it still ended up tasting well. So don't get discouraged if you're baking and something doesn't look like the picture that you saw on Pinterest or whatever. It can still taste super tasty and delicious, even though it doesn't necessarily look picture perfect. So I did find the first two recipes off Pinterest, and then the second recipe is not even really a recipe. It's that easy. I have just seen all over social media these kind of cookies being made, so we'll get to those. Those are the third cookie, and then my mom actually shared the last recipe with me, so I'll just put that in the description box below. But what we're doing right now is just mixing up all of the dry ingredients for our caramel apple sheet cake. Then we're going to come over here, and there's a step that you have to do some things on the stove with. Then you add that to the dry ingredients, and then we're just going to be mixing things together. In my other baking videos, I've mentioned that I'm definitely an amateur, and I feel like watching me try and cut the skin off of the apples highlights the fact that I am an amateur. But I think that's the beauty, because I'm just, an average person, an average mom trying to make some festive and fall kind of treats right now, and I don't really know what I'm doing most of the time, especially with this recipe. I've never made a sheet cake before. I thought I had a peeler, didn't have a peeler, so we're making do with what we have. And it's just a good reminder that you don't have to be perfect, and you can screw something up and it can still end up turning out really well in the end. But you also might mess things up along the way, and that's okay. Maybe you're trying a recipe and it flops, but don't give up, keep trying. And I promise you that if I'm making these recipes, it's truly because I feel like anyone could do it. I actually had another recipe. It was for pumpkin snickerdoodle cookies, and the prep time, I didn't pay attention to that before I picked out the recipe, but the prep time was like an hour in 5 minutes maybe, I don't know, but I assumed there would be some like chilling time in there, and no, it was like an intensive prep. And I'm like, I'm not gonna work that hard for cookies. So trust me, if they're in the video, it's because I've gone through and I've actually made these myself, and decided what was worth it and what wasn't. So be sure to go out on a limb and try something new. You might be pleasantly surprised with what you find. The recipe says to fold in the apples into the batter, and it just makes me chuckle every time. If you've seen the TV show Schitt's Creek, it's hilarious, and two, there's an episode that they're making food and they are talking about folding in the cheese, and they don't know what folding it in means. So I just like chuckle to myself and smile when I read that in recipes. It's just something fun when I come across it. So the sheet cake turned out really great, and I'm just moving on to making the glaze. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the part that it ended up tasting great, but it just looks clumpy and doesn't look as smooth and nice as the Pinterest picture. So I was a little disappointed, but with my first time making a sheet cake, I am very happy with how it turned out. It was super yummy and tasty. So my first recipe is kind of like has apples and caramel apple themed. My second recipe has pumpkins flavor, and then my next ones have different flavors. I wanted to try and get a little bit of everything, just because I know that, some people might not like the apple flavor, some people might not like all of the pumpkin flavor, and I wanted to get just a wide variety for you to show you that yes, pumpkin's everywhere and the apple tastes are everywhere, but even if that isn't like up your alley, it's not your jam, you can still find other things that can give you that fall feel and fall taste as well. This recipe is definitely one that you could take to an event. I am just picturing, like maybe a chili cook-off, or maybe you are going to take it to Thanksgiving, or you just have a get-together in the fall time. It feeds a lot of people, so this one is good to take to an event. My next recipe makes only 12 muffins, so not necessarily the best thing to take to an event. But if you're doing like maybe a brunch with your friends, or you want to do a special fall breakfast for your family, I think this next recipe is perfect for you. Pumpkin cheesecake muffins. Oh my goodness, I was so excited for these. I've had I think they're pumpkin cheesecake muffins from Starbucks, and love the inside of it. I just think they're just so warm and yummy and scream fall. So I wanted to try them out, and now I'm not gonna lie, I was a little intimidated. I wasn't quite sure if I could get them to turn out like the recipe was stating, just because I've never made like such a grand big muffin before. Mine have always been, from a box or just smaller in scale, but this looks a little complicated, I will admit it, but it really isn't. It's just a couple steps. So you have to make the crumb topping, and then you're gonna make the muffin mix, not the pancake, the pumpkin part, and then you are gonna make the cream cheese filling on the inside. So it's not really complicated. It's just like multiple steps, if that makes sense. So this first part is the crumb topping, and so I'm gonna make that first and just get it together so it looks crumbly, and then I'm gonna set that aside and get started on the main part of the muffin mix. So when I think about fall, I think about, pumpkin spice, and I think about apples and caramel. And so when I'm looking on Pinterest, those are some of the things I see, because I think a lot of people have those same thoughts. But is there anything else that like screams fall to you that I'm missing out on? I did a s'mores recipe last fall, and that has been something I made, I'm not kidding you, probably 10 times since then. It was so good. So I sometimes think fall, but what else is like giving you that cozy vibe that's not necessarily Christmas and doesn't necessarily scream fall? I'd love to find more recipes and more flavors to kind of mix things up. So I am trying to show you the different ingredients that I'm using as I'm going along. If they're still in their original packaging, I do put things like granulated sugar and flour into a clear container just because it makes me happy and it's, easy to see and store. But I will have the recipes linked down below, so you don't need to write anything down or try and figure out measurements of things. You can just go and look at the recipe that I used from Pinterest. I'm mixing up the wet ingredients, and I'm going to go ahead and pour those into the dry ingredients once they're all combined. Last step is moving on to making the cream cheese filling. I will say it tasted great, but I do wish I would have gone back with a spatula and made sure that I scraped the bottom, because I just felt like that there were some clumpy parts that didn't get mixed together. And then I was too lazy to go back and mix it all together. So make sure you do that. I didn't want to ruin my recipe, but it ended up turning out fine. But I think it just would have been better if the filling on the inside was completely smooth. So this isn't your typical, you just pour your batter into the muffin tin recipe. So you could have used cupcake liners or muffin liners for this, or just spray your muffin tin. So I opted with just spraying the muffin tin, and it did work out great. I'll say the top of the cupcake gets so fluffy that it was hard to kind of like twist them and get them out. But I think I would have had that issue with a liner, and I was able to just stick a knife down the side and kind of pop them out, and I would have ruined the liner that way. So basically what you do is you do muffin mix, a glob of the cheesecake, muffin mix, and then you put the crumb top. So did you see how big and fluffy those muffins got? They were so delicious and tasty. Now you might be thinking, how in the world are we going to fit 2 recipes in with the amount of time that we have left? And that is because these are seriously so easy. So it's store-bought cookie dough, like pre-cut cookie dough cookies, and then it's the Pillsbury, like not cutout cookies, but like the shape cookies. And I couldn't find the traditional ones that were just a round circle that had, you know, a pumpkin in them. Christmas time, they've got Christmas trees. But my husband found these football ones, and I thought this would still be so perfect because so many people are watching football at Thanksgiving. Watching football is a big thing, and so I know like fall time is a big football time. So I thought this would be perfect, and they ended up turning out great. I will say, my second round, the footballs didn't move and slide as much on top of the chocolate chip cookie because I kind of pressed into the top of the cookie dough and then like didn't press the football cookie on top, but like I like did kind of like make sure it was solid with the chocolate chip cookie, so it acted more as one cookie than 2 cookies, so you can kind of see the football slid a little bit. But then once the cookies were cooled off, they still looked so cute. So I thought these were so fun. Look how like just cute and different these are. These were the recipe that I had seen all over social media. I've seen a lot of people do these, but they ended up turning out so great. I think this is definitely something to take to your next, you know, Sunday football day, or I don't even know when football is on. Why I think it's Sunday, maybe because of the Super Bowl's on Sunday, but whenever you watch football, you should make these. I think that they would be a crowd pleaser, and they do make quite a few. When baking, I feel like I see a lot of trail mixes and certain things where you can add sprinkles or festive M&Ms too, and it's just a fun way to mix things up. But my mom found this recipe and she had me try it at her house, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is so good. So I wanted to recreate it for you all. It's, I don't want to say healthier, I don't know, but it seems like a better version of a trail mix because it's truly just nuts. And I tried to buy ones that had options to be unsalted. You'll see these pistachios; those were roasted and salted. So I couldn't find the cleanest versions of all of the nuts, but it's really just like a mixture of nuts. If you don't like walnuts or you don't like cashews, then you know, skip those or add something different. Or if you're thinking I missed a nut that you love, well, add it in there. I think that's the beauty of trail mixes, is that they can be really customizable to you and what your family likes. So I added a bunch of nuts together. Some of them I did 3/4 a cup, and some of them I only did 1/4 of a cup. And that was really just because of what my mom had told me. And then I added chocolate chips, and then I'm just simply gonna mix honey with it. I do wish I would have used a little bit less of honey that I did. So I did almost 1/2 cup of honey when it was all said and done. By the time I scraped it out, I didn't fill up my second cup, my 1/4 cup as high, so I don't think it was quite 1/2 cup of honey, but it did seem like a little much. You can also, if you're not into the honey taste, you can switch this out for maple syrup, and I think it would taste just as good, if not better. But it's so simple. You just mix all the nuts. I added chocolate chips too, and your honey or your maple syrup. Then you spread it out on a pan and you bake it at 325, I believe, for 20 minutes. You let it cool and you have like such a tasty snack mix. My mom put hers in the fridge after she baked it and made it, and I will say highly recommend doing that. Mine's in my fridge currently right now, and it is just so uber tasty. Thank you so much for being here and for watching this video. I am just so blessed that you picked this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments down below which was your favorite recipe and what you're going to try out. And consider subscribing, and I will see you next Sunday with a new video. Bye.